week on the internet is a series where I talk about all the topics and myths during the week. And first up, we have the PGL CS2 major being crashed by some people who ran up on stage and ended up breaking the trophy. The reason spectators even ran up on stage to begin with is because they were protesting a skin gambling sponsor for the PGL major called CSGORoll. And the organization that called out CSGORoll is CSGOEmpire, a skin gambling site. They made a post called We Wage War, where they go over all the terrible things CSGORoll is allegedly currently doing. And they compare them to a previous Ponzi scheme site called the Hype Drop, which was run by the same person. Basically, CSGORoll is giving people the promise of investing now and you'll make your money back later, which if it is true, it is just a Ponzi scheme. That is what that is. But an important thing to note is people storming the stage to protest CSGORoll were paid protesters by CSGOEmpire. So it isn't a great look for CSGOEmpire. And personally, I think all these sites are basically mafia casinos. They all reside in Curacao, and if you've never heard of this country, it's basically just a gambling safe haven. These sites are totally unregulated, and none of them really have an obligation to pay you if you win, because there are no consequences if they don't. That's why the guy who already scammed people with Hype Drop is doing just fine with CSGORoll. And as someone who knew people who ran similar sites at one point, personally, I think they're all pretty scummy. I was like 16 years old, and I figured out pretty quick they were not good people, and I never talked to them again. But the way I see the situation is CSGOEmpire doesn't like competition, so they took the chance they had to get rid of it. I really don't recommend ever using these sites, because they can say they're fair all they want, but realistically, they don't have to be fair. And even if they are fair, the house always wins. A casino is not gonna go bankrupt, because they rigged the game so you always lose. Even legitimate casinos with protections are rigged against you. But besides all that, I think this move from CSGOEmpire was pretty stupid, if I'm being honest, because Valve doesn't have to answer to anybody. They are a private company, and they clearly just do whatever they want for the most part. Hiring protesters to rush the stage and ruin the tournament is probably a really good way to get Valve to shut them down. CSGOEmpire and CSGORoll are literally dependent on Valve allowing them to exist. If Valve thinks it's too much trouble, they'll just shut them down. And this isn't far-fetched. They've done this before. CSGO gambling sites used to be a lot worse in terms of how many there were and how sketchy they were. Valve will shut them down again if they need to. But next up, we have something fun. Smiling Friends comes back tomorrow on March 31st, 2024. This show is super funny. I'm a huge fan of it. I even showed it with my parents when I was visiting at one point, because I kind of wanted to see what the reaction would be. And I thought my dad would like it, but he just thought it was weird. But my mom found it really funny, which I was not expecting, because a lot of the humor in that show is really out there. But it is a super good show. I highly recommend giving it a watch. And next up, we have Dragon's Dogma 2 news. So since I last talked about this game, I have put a lot of hours into it. And the microtransactions are not pay to win, but they still should not be there. And if you are defending them, you are the reason microtransactions are going to get worse. Marketing departments are going to screenshot your tweets and posts defending this and say, oh, look, they don't care that much. Stop defending it. You can say you like the game, but the microtransactions are cringe. It's all you have to say. I don't know why you people want microtransactions in your game. But besides that, there's a bit of a conspiracy that Capcom removed content from the main game to make DLC later. And I tend to agree. They put out a survey asking if people would be interested in DLC and how much people would pay for DLC not even a week after release of the game. And the game itself is fun, but the enemy types are pitiful. Most monsters in the game are just reskins that are slightly more difficult in each region of the game. If you go to the forest, you'll find goblins, wolves, and lizards. And if you go to the desert, you'll find different goblins, wolves, and lizards. It's kind of disappointing, especially with how large the map is. And there are more monsters in that, but there's not that many more. It is actually just a lot of repeats. And it's not a deal breaker, but it does make it feel like main content was pulled out of the game to make DLC. And in Capcom's defense, they did release a minor patch addressing some of the performance issues, and they also added a new game button to the menu, which was not there before. Personally, I have not really noticed a performance boost. It feels the same as it did before to me, but maybe other people have had a better experience with the patch. But even with all these little issues, the game is still great. I recommend it. Just get it on sale. And if you play games on a PC, make sure your hardware can run this game. It is a very demanding game. If you can't run it, you will just have a bad time. In more gaming news, we have poor Phil Spencer, who has to constantly grow his company because of capitalism. In all seriousness, complaining about this is annoying, but it is also an actual problem. Companies in general are at a point where infinite growth is just not realistic. The fact that companies that are publicly traded have to constantly work for the shareholders is annoying. I do think that requirement needs a rework, but the problem with that is everyone's retirement is tied up in companies. So if they stop growing, people don't have retirement money. But that is a generalized problem. In the case with Xbox, they're just being greedy. They had record-breaking profits in Q1 of this year. Phil Spencer is just saying this to get people to be less mad at their layoffs, because those layoffs did not need to happen. And what's especially annoying is if Xbox bothered to maintain talent instead of cycling through employees, they'd probably make much more money, because Halo Infinite would have made so much money if they didn't release it in the pathetic state they did. All they had to do was hire people who liked Halo and pay them to work on Halo. But instead of doing that, they hired contractors and cycled them out constantly, so everyone in the project was always clueless about what they needed to do. It is one of the biggest fumbles in gaming history. At this point, I am convinced executives are just actually a group of the dumbest people alive. And speaking of dumb things, we have City Skylines 2 releasing a DLC for Beach House assets when the game is still borderline unplayable. This game still has performance issues even after patches to address it. The patches did help with performance, but it's nowhere near where it should be. So charging $10 for this pitiful asset pack is unacceptable. The DLC has 1,000 reviews on Steam and only 5% of that are positive. And the only reason I think people own this DLC is because people who bought the deluxe edition got the expansion pass, so they automatically got this DLC. Either way, this game was such a huge disappointment, and it's also a huge fall from grace compared to City Skylines 1, because that game is great. The second one sucks. And next up, we have True Social news. You probably never expected me to talk about this, but here we are. If you don't know what True Social is, it's basically the website Donald Trump made to schizo post after he got banned from everywhere else. And the reason I'm talking about it is because it went public and became a meme stock. For some reason, this website is worth billions, even though it has an estimated user count of under 500,000 people. To put that into perspective, Facebook has 3 billion users. In the grand scheme of things, no one uses this website. So it being worth billions of dollars is really weird. And everyone agrees that it is really weird it's worth this much money. That's pretty much all we know right now, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, True Social is definitely not worth billions of dollars. I am shocked it is that high. And next up in the realm of insanity, we have Sam Bankman-Fried getting sentenced to 25 years in prison for orchestrating the FTX fraud. This is well deserved. If you need a little recap, basically Sam Bankman-Fried owned and operated the crypto exchange FTX, and he gambled everyone's money on other investments and lost it all. This guy, in my opinion, deserves longer, because the second this dude gets out, he's going to try the same thing again. Like, before this guy went to prison, he made a list of options to win the public back, and one of them was come out as Republican on Tucker Carlson. He's a weasel of a human being, and I'm glad he's in prison. And next up, we have Russia trying to make their own Steamdeck. If you're unaware, basically Russia is trying to do this thing where they become entirely self-sufficient, which makes sense because no one likes Russia right now for kind of obvious reasons, but they want to make their own versions of every product, including Steam, Steamdeck, and SteamOS. It's interesting they try to do this, but I doubt it's gonna work. I am sure EU CSGO players would love if Russia got off their game, because the biggest complaint I hear about EU players is Russians who don't speak English, but that probably won't happen. I doubt Russia could put together a competent Steam equivalent and manage to get everyone to switch over to it, because people in Russia do use Steam. And from what I understand, the Russian populace generally still prefer Western products from Europe and America. As an American, I am definitely biased in this thinking, because the only products I'm familiar with that Russia has made are old cars. And those cars are known as being some of the worst cars to literally ever exist. But I don't think Russia will become a powerhouse of innovation and make a Steam Deck 2 anytime soon. And next up, we have Dune Awakening, an open world survival MMO based on Dune. This game looks good. I recently watched Dune and Dune 2, and both movies were great. I highly recommend watching them. And honestly, I think this game will be good, because I played Dune Spice Wars, and it's actually a really good game. It's a real-time strategy game. I bought it and played it before I even watched Dune because the reviews were extremely good, and it is a good game. I was a bit confused of why I needed to collect Spice, because I didn't watch the movie before I played it, but I had fun. If they keep up the standards for the Dune IP, I see no reason why this game would suck. My only potential gripe with Dune as a game is the environment, because a desert is inherently kind of boring. The developers who are making this game also make Conan Exiles, which is a similar kind of game that has good reviews. So it is looking like this might be good. I wouldn't get your hopes too high though if you're a Dune fan, because this genre is kind of cursed. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe. New follow me on Twitter @spatnz. One click answer, check out more of my content, and have a good one.